The other big engine. In this episode, Thomas meets another big engine in Brazil called Gustavo, who he believes he reminds him of Gordon. This episode has a very interesting concept plot about Thomas meeting an engine who almost has the same words as Gordon.
Oh, the indignity!
Oh, and yes, finally, after a season with only 3 countries, we get to see Thomas go to Brazil. Well, okay, that did happen in the movie, but it happened in season 23 instead of season 22. And hopefully we get to see Thomas travel to Italy in an upcoming 2-part special. A 2-parter where we never had a 2-part episode in a long time. Now let's move on before I would think of dragging the wants of Thomas going to other countries outside of Sodor for too long. Anyway, the episode starts off with Thomas traveling around Brazil with Gabriela, when he sees a big electric wire diesel engine coming around the tracks going fast at high speed. Thomas later meets up with the new engine he saw earlier, and his name was Gustavo of Brazil. Well, okay, Gustavo, let's leave it that way. Well, throughout the episode, we hear what these words mean in Portuguese. Let's take a listen.
Espresso passando! É o país do futuro. Oh, indignidade!
Oh, indignidade!
Muito importante! 4! 8! Ordano!
Hear what I mean? It's quite interesting that engines from other countries can speak more than one language. Don't get me wrong, I have heard that before in Blue Mountain Mystery, a movie that was made before the Big World Big Adventures idea and concept. Thomas began to feel interested about this Gustavo of his. He begins wondering who the engine thinks reminds him the most. He thought of Edward or Henry or Toby or the Flying Scotsman, but neither of them have the same personality traits judging by the fact that they don't act like what Gordon acts. Oh, creative elements by the way. After an accident happens, Gustavo says "Oh indignidade" in response to him crushing fruit mangoes on the tracks. Thomas suddenly heard what Gustavo was saying. Gabriela responds to Thomas that "Oh indignidade" means "Oh the indignity." Thomas was right. Huh. Gordon and Gustavo have the exact same catchphrase. Or well, 2, as a matter of fact. Yeah. Thomas never believed he'd travel around the world to meet up with another engine that has a personality just like Gordon. Or okay, what I meant to say was who had the same catchphrase, but well, then again, I would say so he thought. It leads him to a fantasy sequence that really is subtle if Gordon and Gustavo do have the exact same personalities, where they would say Thomas would be a silly little... Okay, let the 2 say that for me before I would spoil something. Thomas meets with Gustavo again, but he believes he could be Gordon because of you-know-why. Gustavo tells Thomas not to take the Electric Express line, which I wonder why. We'll get into that later. Thomas didn't care what Gustavo said, he took the express line anyway, and we get to see more of what Brazil has in this episode when Thomas was going on a line Gustavo told him not to go earlier. I quite like how the waterfall was set as shown in the episode, plus the rainforest in between. That's something we need to see more of. More locations. More places that are based off of real-life countries in one railway, or railroad, if there ever will be an episode where Thomas goes to America. Please, Mattel, we want an episode where Thomas goes to America. please, Mattel, please! Thomas began realizing something is wrong with him, as it turns out his boiler was running out of water. Oh, and he's also running out of coal too. He notices Gustavo coming the other direction. He tries to blow his whistle, but he couldn't since he ran out of water. But wait. One question is that, I wonder how a steam engine can't use its whistle well if the engine ends up running out of water. I guess that's something I haven't known, but then again, I digress. Thomas waits for the crash to happen, but Gustavo realizes Thomas was on the same line as him, and he kindly applies his brakes to stop. Thomas explains he didn't like being bossed around by big blue engines, including Gordon and him. But in fact, it turns out Gustavo isn't bossing him around. He was just trying to be kind to Thomas by helping him. Well, he had a fair point, Thomas. Gustavo helps Thomas on his way to get some coal and water for the blue tank engine. But Thomas tells him that he reminded him of another engine called Gordon, after he apologizes to Gustavo. Gustavo considers him a fiery, funny little engine. Gustavo asks Thomas about Gordon, and Thomas tells him about the time Gordon didn't bring his safety valve during the Great Railway Show in England as the episode ends. Would you look at that? Ending this episode on a way to give out continuity to the Great Race is quite a pass. Even though, as said on my review on DeviantArt, the Great Race is okay, but again, it is nowhere as offensive or as bad as... Fuck it, do I even bother mentioning the sad excuse of a Thomas movie anymore? Anyways, this is a good start to the international episodes of Season 23. I like the story, the concept, the imagination sequence, and the introductions of Gustavo, Kasaya the Crane, and Gabriella. Oh, and also the episode being set in Brazil. I also like how Thomas learned never to go on another railway line that is only referred to engines like Gustavo to run on. Let me catch my breath, sorry, I'm going too fast. Because of the fact that he is a steam engine and Gustavo is an electric wire diesel train that runs on the electric telegraph railway, even though it wasn't mentioned as a lesson in the Learn with Thomas segment after the episode. Gustavo is one of the characters from Brazil I did seem to like because of how he is... Well, I'm kind of like Thomas here, but he does remind me of Gordon almost, except he isn't a show-off or even an engine who doesn't find little engines annoying, as what Gordon said in Tender Engines in Season 3.
Big engines have big needs. Little engines are just annoying.
This episode overall serves out an 8.5 out of 10. I quite like this one. Sure, the story is simple, but it is quite clever and fresh, since we get a tank engine interacting with an electric wire diesel engine that is from the land of the future, aka Brazil. This ends my review here, and I mustn't tell you anymore, or I would have spoiled the next episode for you. Take care!